everyone and welcome to India Foundation Specials. On this International Women's Day, we'll be in conversation with 4 stellar women who have achieved a lot in their lives in terms of their professional and personal capacities. In conversation today, we'll try and bring in issues of gender dynamics, value-laden, absolutely theoretical terms like gender justice, gender practice, gender parity, and how they translate into real lives. Let me introduce the panel to you before we take you to the real action, which is the discussion on the table. I'm honored to be hosting it for the India Foundation. In conversation today, we'll have Dr. Vandana Mishra, Assistant Professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University. She has been teaching for the past 18 years, has co-authored a number of books. Also in conversation would be Dr. Savita Khan, who has been teaching for the past 13 years, took a break, raised children, and has now been leading conversations on ground, taking literature festivals to the nook and crannies of rural India. We also have in conversation Gauri Dwivedi, a very well-known television face. She has been in print and electronic journalism for the past 16 years. In conversation, we have Hamsa Devineni, a practicing lawyer and a politician from BJP in Andhra Pradesh. As you can see that these 4 wonderful women with 4 wonderful profiles would be in conversation. Let me throw open this conversation to Savita ji first. Savita ji, how do you look at this entire discourse on gender? What does it entail and who exactly are we referring to? Who are we conversing with when we talk about issues like gender justice, patriarchy, gender equality and terms like that?
It is a very pertinent question which you have thrown. See, gender, the way we understand it, the way we practice it, in fact, we will have to locate its gaze. From where do we understand? From the vantage point through which we understand gender is very, very important. Why do we celebrate certain days? Why do we understand gender the way we understand? And what are the practices of a certain society where this gender is being understood, kind of by certain sections? There is a vast gap, I would say, the way we practice gender and the way we theorize gender. So, the gaze and location of gender studies has to be, it has to be understood in a wider spectrum. The gaps needs to be understood, and then we can basically, have a holistic point of view of gender, whether it's justice, whether it's parity, whether it's, whatever political correctness or dynamics of gender we want to understand. So, there is a severe need of, I would say, relocating the way gender is being understood and the way it is being studied, the way it is being philosophized. Gender is also a philosophy in a sense, where a gap with the mass, the way they understand gender, and the elite academia, the way they profess gender, there is a vast gap. So, I would say that, academia and general mass needs to be basically on parity when we discuss gender, when we talk gender, and when we expect that gender becomes a better tool to operate.
Vandana ji, you have been in academics for the longest time, and this is a very interesting question that I think Savita ji's introduction throws to us. In practice and in theory, how does gender display itself? All of us remember you as a person who was literally incarcerated in a classroom for more than 29 hours in an environment which keeps talking about discrimination at multiple levels in a certain language and with a certain kind of politics. How do you see this entire discourse within that framework?
Actually, I would like to continue the discussion on where Savita ji left, that it is not possible to define or theorize gender in isolation with the general status of women in the society. We have to locate gender in the society, and that society is a mix of the elites that she is talking about and the common people, where there is a gap between theory and practice. The question that you have raised about me being in a classroom for 29 hours, I don't think was a gender issue. It was more related to a position that I was holding, and the students were protesting against the position. They were not protesting against Miss Vandana. So that I think, not only think that I felt that it was not a gender issue. But I would like to say, I would like to bring in a positive note here also, since I am in academics, and if you look at the graph of the enrollment of students, girls in higher education or in positions of teaching, then the graph over the last 4 or 5 decades is gradually rising, right? From less than 10% on the eve of independence, it has gone up to about 48.6% in 2019. That's the enrollment thing I'm talking about. Similarly, the number of women in academics at the level of assistant professors or at the level of school have increased. But if we come at the position of managers or administrators or at the level of professors or even directors of higher education institution, the story is absolutely underrepresented. Women do not go up to that position, and there are n number of reasons. We definitely will come to all those reasons also. But that's absolutely a different story. In All India AISHE, All India Survey on Higher Education has given a data like only 17% of vice chancellors, pro vice chancellors, directors of higher education institutions are held, the positions are held by women. That comes out to be 1 woman for every 4 men. So as you climb the ladder, this ladder peaks at the top, and the women are there at the, they are hired for assistant professors or different lower level teaching positions. But while going up, they somehow, you know, this you feel that the glass ceiling is still there. We are not able to break that glass ceiling.
Gauri, it's interesting that when we discuss the issue of identity, and it's very liberating also to feel that in academia perhaps there is a space to be an independent woman in your own right and not allow gender dynamics to play. But in a media like electronic, the television screen where we see women anchors,
pretty ones at that, yes.
Pretty ones at that. There's
Yes.
specific standards of beauty that need to be alluded to. How do you see that entire structure? Also because there are so many women anchors working in television.
Yes.
And where do you see is the move forward?
First of all, thank you to be part of this very august setting, and 3 women achievers, actually 4 with me here. But you know, as far as TV journalism, Shubhrastha, that you pointed out, or journalism in general, you're right in terms of the unfortunate standardization, or one can even go a step further, commodification as far as women journalists or anchors have become or are expected to adhere to. You know, there are standards of not journalism but beauty that they are expected to adhere to. Unfortunate but true. That also tells you that how much of women issues can they really focus on. They are also a product and part of the same ecosystem that expects a certain standard from them as well. So that raises questions in terms of how much can the media really address women's issues which still unfortunately are not being addressed. As far as you know, the industry per se, you know, I was just going through some very back of the envelope kind of calculations in terms of data points coming out, where the differences are most stark in print, between print and TV journalism. In print, about 32 to 35% of the articles, let's say a third of all articles are written by women. About 40% of the workforce is women, and less than 5% editors are women. So where do they all go? So in TV it is slightly better, it is about 12 to 14%, but that could be because of a few trailblazers. It's not changing the trend so far, it's just a few trailblazers who may make us believe that TV journalism is probably going a step further in terms of addressing those issues. But the fundamental issue remains the same, which is underrepresentation of women at the top level, something that Dr. Vandana also pointed out in terms of academics. It may not be as acute as academics, but it's nevertheless there. And the second part is that when you talk about women's issues, that's one thing I wanted to talk about, which is that a woman issue or a woman crime can never ever be a gender crime. That's one thing I want to say, and I'll tell you why I say that. You mentioned TV journalism. You take any woman crime or a gender crime in any channel, in any language, it either has a lens of caste, it either has a lens of some social rivalry, or there is some other lens through which that gender crime will be viewed as. She will not be a woman alone. She will have a certain caste to it, right? So that generalization of gender crimes robs the very essence of covering it or even trying to get any sort of justice for that woman. And that's a trend you can mark anywhere. Any geography in India, any language, any kind of crime. And that's the unfortunate part, which I thought was very important to bring out, because that itself takes away the kind of messaging that journalism itself is trying to do.
Hamsa, when it comes to questions of identity, you fought Lok Sabha elections. How was it being, and I hate to use that term, but how was it to be a woman politician? Was it any different than being a politician in general?
I don't think so. I would only say it differently because it's a male-dominated field, and there are very few women seen, and therefore the negative aspects of women entering a male-dominated area would probably be pervading. But more than that, I think politics as such, when you look at it in terms of the gender parity, when you talk of politics, it's about voting, right? When you go to cast your vote, how many women are turning out, how many men are turning out? When we look at the statistics, in 1960 to the elections of the Lok Sabha, probably the gender parity was at 16-17%. So for 43% of women who came out to vote, there were about 63% of men. So about 17 to 18% of gender gap in the voter turnout. And that has slowly reduced now. So that's a good news that more and more women are coming out to vote. And 2019 elections saw just a gap of about 0.3%. So that is a lot of development. Like Vandana ji also said, that the gap is reducing. But with respect to women at parliamentarians, women as parliamentarians or legislators, it's a totally different story. We still have a huge gap to see women in high positions. Back then, it was a big gap, and now also in 2019, we still hold a huge difference between women parliamentarians and men parliamentarians. And all over the world, it stands at 20 to 25%, the gap difference globally. So this is not the gender difference that we're fighting only in India, it's all over the world. So women parliamentarians and women legislatures all over the world are at 20 to 25%, whereas they constitute 50% of the population. So they're not even 1/4 of the total population, which is ironic state of affairs. And I think what needs to be done is that not that there is no selection, candidacy also. If you look at the candidates, women candidates that have competed elections in India, just 9% of the candidates are women. The option of choosing politics as an option itself is less. So where do you think of having parliamentarians or elected representatives when there's nobody to go in and take it at the first place? So I think awareness has to increase. Women have to be seen. The purpose of a woman's life should be seen beyond being a person, a caretaker for a man or a child bearer for a man. But women's life purpose has to be defined by her own terms. She should be having the liberty and the awareness to be able to determine what her life's purpose is, apart from just being a caregiver and a child bearer for a man. So that is the first thing I think we need to do. A lot of NGOs are working on ground, on women's rights and all of that, but that's more to do with violence and, against violence and women's rights and all of that. But this kind of awareness to really bring people onto mainstream professionalism and to really put it into them that, your lives are much more valuable and much more worth it than just being caregiver or a child bearer for a man. So this aspects have to be brought about more. I think there has to be more awareness, more knowledge given to women, and of course the environment has to be conducive. We've had reservations in 1994, I guess, in the 73rd, 74th Amendment. We came about with, Indian Parliament came about with 33% reservation in the local bodies for women to encourage them to participate in the political discourse. But statistics say that women participation has increased from 4 to 5% to 25 to 40% after the reservations, but they're all proxies. So not really talented women, not really people who can hold power, people who can command power are there. So just the reservation is not the answer. I think it's a holistic thing where there has to be a lot of awareness, a lot of knowledge given to women to come out and expose themselves, and they have to also be developed. The traits, the personality has to be developed, self-confidence, the capacity that they can do something for the society. So it's a holistic thing according to me. And I would end with one quote by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, the father of the Constitution. He said, we measure the development of the society by the progress the women have made. So I think that sums up everything. And sadly, being the largest democracy in India, we still don't have democracy in terms of women. So that's where I would float it open. Yeah.
Savita ji, I would come back to you because during a small breakout session, you were deliberating on this very interesting term called ecology of thought. The language that Hamsa and our generation sort of speaks about women being told, not really told, but women should be educated to think in a certain way, to behave in a certain way. Who are we trying to negotiate with? Because, you know, as I want to give the audience a context under which I am asking this question. Savita ji is one woman who took literature festivals to the nook and crannies of India's villages. Her, through Maithili Machan, the kind of initiatives that she took in Mithila in creating an environment of sustainable and more inclusive participation of women and men in literary discourse is commanding. So, Savita ji, I want to take this question to you. When we talk about ecology of thought, where did we change our ecology in the course of our development journey as a nation, that today as women we are negotiating with an unseen entity, that we should be given this position of power, we should be we should be educated enough to think that we have a role beyond childbearing. I'm sure there is somebody that we are talking to. Who is that unknown entity we are talking to?
Yes, I think now we are getting closer to the point from where we started, when you started talking about, from where to this whole entire idea of gender is coming to us. Like modernism came to us via colonialism. Similarly, you know, gender justice, because ultimately we are talking gender in a sense of power dynamics. When we talk of development, women only become, because I would go back to Vandanaji's arguments, that if we have 16% of data suggesting that women are educated, then we feel okay, 16 is not enough, 60 would be enough, and 60% of women, women's education would bring empowerment. We forget and we fail to understand that, you know, we are talking of women empowerment in a totally different paradigm. We have a paradigm shift where we know that women themselves are, here Shakti is a feminine term, right? You do not need to be educated, or you do not need to be a parliamentarian, or you do not need to be, you know, somebody to achieve that, to have that sense of empowerment. You are Shakti in yourself. So we have that notion, but, you know, how far is that in praxis? You know, I mean, the gap between this theory that women is Shakti. So to bringing that empowerment to women through education, through political participation, or through media, you know, visibility, whatever. I don't think when we had Rini Simon or when we had Barkha Dutt, they were there for their looks, they were not, right? Being presentable is equally applicable to men as well as women. Why do we only, you know, point it out as a matter of discrimination when we talk of women? I don't think that's, you know, that's fair enough. One, whosoever is facing the camera needs to be presentable, that's all, right? We need to look at it. Similarly, you know, my entire idea of how do I look at women's education, or why did I look at it? My mother is not literate, but she is educated. So there is a vast difference between being literate and being educated. You know, to have the knowledge. She had immense knowledge of different traditional, you know, kind of intellectual traditions, which I do not have, which, you know, many of educated women, literate women may not have, but she has. So this entire idea of looking at women through statistics is a failed project, I would say. Looking at, you know, women through statistics of, you know, how much of them are where, and then deciding how much development, you know, journey we have made is an extremely, it has lost its steam, I would say. You know, the way, I do not want to say that, but the way reservation and, you know, kind of the question is losing, you know, it's going haywire. How much of justice actually we are getting? You know, that's the question. So the same way, if gender justice takes, or gender journey takes, I would like to bring in Gandhi here. Gandhi said, you know, democracy is the biggest evil. If we are talking of democratization of women, you know, and then try to realize how safe or how powerful or how empowered women are, I think we are talking a wrong turn. We need to basically localize our needs, and then see through our own prism of how do we empower. Why do we talk of not only men, women who are bearing children? Why? Bearing a children is an ordinary job. Is it less than ordinary job? This is the most significant job which is, which is carrying the world forward. Not, I just don't want to be seen only cooking. Why? Cooking is the world's greatest chefs are men. When men are cooking it, that becomes empowerment. But when women are cooking, that becomes, kind of keeping you in a cage. Why should I only, so basically they are, kind of, we are demonizing certain jobs. And the parity of looking at, these are skills. Cooking is a skill, childbearing is a skill. That's I think the biggest skill of, humankind has. So I would say that, women are already, this is not only kind of, I'm not practicing tokenism where when I say that women are superior in so many ways, which men cannot do, they cannot even think of, right? So when Gandhi says that sacrifice is a power, you do not see Sita, I mean, I do not see Sita as a woman who is a weakling. Rather, I would say the amount of only powerful can sacrifice, not weak ones, right? So the ones who sacrifices, the one who takes the maximum, kind of burden of humankind upon themselves are the most powerful ones. So why do not we realize that we have a different prism or a different paradigm altogether to look at empowerment, the idea itself? Why do we need statistics to look at how much women, okay, fine, only 2 VCs are there, so women are not empowered. I think this is the most farcical, kind of way to go ahead.
I think it's a case of social conditioning as well. When you talk about what is it that women are expected to do vis-a-vis what women want to do. And I agree with parts of what Savita ji said that, a lot of what a woman does, a man is not capable of doing. And that realization, I think, is universal or should be universal. But beyond that, the real empowerment will come when a woman has the choice to either do this or that. I have a son, and it should be my choice alone that I spend all my time with him. Nobody else should be telling me to do that. However, if I choose to divide my time, that should also be only my choice. And I think that's the real empowerment, that when I get to make that choice, irrespective of the consequences, if I choose to let go of a career, there are economic consequences for myself more than anybody else. Likewise, if I let go of spending time with my son, I let go of, well, the most beautiful years of his childhood, but those consequences and those decisions are mine alone. And if I'm able to make that, then I'm empowered enough. And I think that's the journey that we all need to be making towards, irrespective of, I agree with what Savita ji said, irrespective of her level of education. That is immaterial, but if she has the choice to be able to, exercise that choice, and I think that's the way forward, and no amount of tokenism can help us get there. That is when we need to move away from these generalizations. वो खाना बनाती है, अरे वो तो सिर्फ खाना ही बना सकती है. That generalization can move out only when we, stop being victims of that generalization, and that's because of our social conditioning. We are victims of that social conditioning which tells us, अरे इतनी उम्र हो गई, एक ही बच्चा हुआ. You are supposed to bear children. You are supposed to have, these many milestones as a woman, not because of anything else, but as a woman. And I think those milestones, unless and until we de-link from a woman's journey, will not be able to really make her empowered.
As a parliamentarian or as a politician, where do you think we are missing the point when it comes to policy making with respect to women?
Yeah, this is exactly what I wanted to pick up on Gauri also. That was a very right thing, what you picked up on, that women should have a choice. But that is if women know they have choices. Urban women who are educated, who brought up in well-to-do families, who have been taught to make choices from their childhood through their nurturing, say when you grow up, what do you want to become? When you grow up, what do you want to do? So this kind of lifestyle, they have umpty number of choices to choose from. But for rural women, they are only brought up to get married, probably reach puberty, then get married, and then bear children, and then do sacrifice all your life just for your family, stay at home, and they don't even realize that they do not have a choice. They don't even realize that they have so many choices, in the world to take, and their purpose of life is something beyond the family.
That's social conditioning.
So that's the mindset. I would say the social conditioning is just another word. So the mindset, and how do we build that? Like what is happening? I'll just take an example since you mentioned, when I was contesting elections, I just had 15 days to catch up with the final day of polling. So I had 15 days to campaign. In my campaign, I tried to come up with something out of the box to reach out to the people. So I'd go and find find a budgie person. Few of you might have seen me. Somebody is putting budgie, I would sit with him in my nice sunglasses and my full attire and all. I make budgie with them and feed people around and all of that. I see a tractor guy, stop him, he's going with a whole load of stones on behind, and I take the tractor and I drive. So in all of this process, when I was doing this, I got a lot of appreciation from different people. They said, this is a fantastic thing you've done. But there were also a bunch of people, or many of them, from the opposition camp or from the BJP camp who are not very happy with me, who came up and said, oh, she looks very beautiful, so maybe people thought she's some new actress, so people saying hi. So this is exactly what Savita ji was saying. Women are identified. Gender identification, why is that coming in the first place? Why do you identify, is it a male or a female? And when it is a female, when it comes to beauty or appearance, directly, a female is, judged by that. So identifying, I think that's the main problem. The mindset is two aspects. One is identifying based on gender. Second is about the inferiority and superiority. Men by default think they're superior to women, and women by default think they're inferior to men. Irrespective of how good you're doing, your husband and you, but at some point of time you have some kind of inferiority. You feel like, he's a man, so he has to do things out. It's the societal framework, I think. And these two things have to change. This is the mindset that has to change with respect to identifying based on gender, and after identifying the inferiority and superiority complex. And this is all pervading in all spheres, not just politics, it's just all pervading.
What all of us are talking actually, there are certain stereotypes which were established. There are certain very straight-jacketed disciplines that the women were supposed to go in. You will become a nurse, you will become a teacher, and if you're very good, you will become a doctor. But nobody talked about, you will go into space, you will become say a politician, if it is considered as difficult as being in space, or, in India, definitely it's a difficult task. So these stereotypes, now it's not a time to talk about these stereotypes. We have broken it. Right? And we have broken it unknowingly. All of us sitting here have broken those stereotypes. Now, as she was saying, though, fine, I agree that, statistics or data is sometimes misleading also, but data also tells us that these stereotypes were, practicing. You have less women in MBAs, you have less women in engineering, you have less women in medical sciences. Fine, if there are more women in humanities, good, very good. But if you do not reach at the top of these institutions, these fields, you cannot change the rules of the game. The fields will lie open just like that as we see them now, and we will continue talking like this, sitting in groups and saying that, the women are forced to do this, women are forced to make certain choices. I come from a family where my mother similarly is not educated, but much not literate, but much more educated than what I can think today. Both of my parents, they made me drive a scooter, drive a car, and my father made me change a flat tire. He said, when you go on a road, you should know how to, he made me change a flat tire in front of him, that you learn this. It's not only learning how to drive and acting smart, you learn how to change a flat tire. So this is, these stereotypes need to be broken. If you want to take advantage of your femininity, then don't expect that you get, all other advantages. This is, if you're talking of equal world, you play on that field as an equal partner.
Savita ji, as women from India, we would always identify with a strong woman that Sita is. My question to you is, how many Sitas do we have in rural India today? I want to link the conversation that Hamsa just had with us, creating that urban-rural divide. I agree that there are rural women who are absolutely more empowered. If we go back to the folk songs, and we've had these discussions many a times in the past as well, how empowering some of their articulations are in their creative spaces. But when it comes to conversations like this, where do we see the Sitas in our roots?
That's what Shubhrastha I was suggesting, that we have to actually change the parameters through which we look at empowerment itself, right? You do not, I'll give you one example. We were talking of, I think, of the coffee, we were talking of power dressing in media, right?
Yeah.
So one such appearance, it was some kind of stand-up talk I was given, and I was told to, to dress in a certain way. In fact, to defy that, I generally wear this humble sari, so I wore sari, and I wore it the way my community women wear it, right? And then I went there, and I think my students, the one who had called me for the talk, they were shocked. And they said, you will speak like that. I said, this is not going to affect my oral skills. You want to, listen to me, or, you are concerned with my attire. So if power dressing is something which comes from a position, this will become now a new power position, right, from my attire. So see, we have to change the rules of the games. That's true, as Vandana said, and many of my fellow conversationists said that. How many Sitas you said that are there? I would say many. Why do we assume, taking from Hamsa's, in fact, arguments, why do we think that, there is a set mentality? We think there is a stereotype. We think that if women are clad this way, they are cooking, they are living this way, this certain kind of lifestyle, they do not know what are their choices. I think this is a big misnomer. My mother, her mother, my kind of aunts knew their minds pretty well, better than me. One of the journalists, she was visiting my village, and she said, oh, for 30 years your aunt hasn't visited another village, she hasn't kind of a train, or how poor she is. I said, ask her if she feels that by not visiting or by not taking a train, she feels that poor, then she is a poor. If she acknowledges this thing that, by not riding a train or riding a bus, she is, these are not the parameters through which you say that a woman is empowered or not. She is exercising her choices or not. Similarly, by looking at, we are predetermined about a lot of things. We think that these lot of women may not be exercising their choices.
Because perhaps they've internalized patriarchy in a certain, if one were to use the linguistics which would challenge the point of view that you are coming from, the general quip would be that these women in the villages who have never moved out, they have internalized patriarchy, so they don't see the kind of grander oppression that they are being subjected to. How would you respond to them?
No, this has a point. This has a point that internalizing patriarchy is something which, they do not know that they have done, right? As academicians, we can see that, we can basically, kind of talk about that, but until unless we make them realize that, this is the oppressing point and you have to move beyond this. There is no point, talking about, this is also stigmatizing a woman that she has internalized patriarchy. She is not making choices because, she has internalized. Until unless, kind of explain to her and then ask her about choices, then see how differently does she behave. That would take, kind of years and years and, million of years to make each and every woman realize that, look woman, you have internalized patriarchy, this is why you are behaving the way you are behaving, and then see, give her choices, and then see, I am not opposing that the women should be given, they should be given, as many choices, whatever is possible in this world, and then see how, is that happening? No, that is not happening. We are stereotyping, and then we are saying that, she has internalized patriarchy, this is why she is not moving on. She is not moving on, damn it, because she has not been given choices, right? If still she, kind of believes the way, a certain, make a choice, many of my, kind of colleagues made a choice that they want to be mothers. Is that, I'll give you one example. I was kind of participating in a seminar, and for many years I was Gaia from academic world. So a friend asked me, what have you been doing? I said, I was raising my children. I asked you what you have been doing. So I said, yes, I was raising my children. I have 2 daughters and I was raising them. So she said, that's not a work. See, this is the kind of, so even academicians are internalizing certain kind of patriarchy. It's not only, kind of a certain class or community of women, those who are, bereft of choices, those who are bereft of any academic understanding are internalizing patriarchy. We all are,
Even in our fights for freedom, we are internalizing.
Yes, we are internalizing patriarchy, and we see kind of if a woman is kind of pretty, then only she can go to media. We educated are internalizing and kind of practicing these things, looking at statistics, and then only if a woman is professor, she is powerful enough. If a woman sitting next to you singing a extremely meaningful folk song, she is not powerful enough to you. So these, kind of these notions of power or feeling empowered, or the who is powerful, who is not, so these kind of notions we all have internalized. This is also patriarchy, right? So we need to basically think at multiple levels, I would say, and then come to an understanding that how patriarchy is oppressive, how much oppressive it is, where all, you know, kind of which are the points which needs to be identified and then looked upon, then, you know, kind of that needs a kind of a certain treatment, a solution, and then move ahead. But that would need a wider consultation and a wider you know, range of choices thrown open to all, not only to some, to decide for others, right?
Gauri, how do you see this conversation?
How long term is the journey?
How long term is the journey?
Yes.
And when would we see a woman anchor in, and I'm deliberately using the term woman anchor, in a national television studio rebel and say that this is not the dress or this is not the makeup that I'm doing to fit into your mold?
Okay, so one thing I agree with what she said in the beginning, that some amount of presentability is important. I agree with that. But you know, beyond looks, I'll tell you, this is not limited only to media. You look at, you know, wherever we find role models, our role models need to fit our own assessment of beauty. You know, even when it comes to something like climate activists, we will choose a 21-year-old out of college activist, but not an 80-year-old woman who spent 70 years of her life, because she wears a sari in a traditional way, she speaks her local language, she's done for her local economy, but she just doesn't speak in English, right? So those icons of empowerment are what we want in our own minds, and those who don't fit it, unfortunately, just, you know, fall by the wayside. And that happens everywhere. Take, for instance, even cinema, or for that matter, this parallel cinema that we have started. And you know, this whole OTT content that we see so much of, how much of that really liberates women in the garb of semi-nudity, in the garb of as much obscenity as, you know, can be passed because there's no law? How much of that actually is empowering a woman? It isn't, but it fits our notions of beauty, and therefore it passes off as women empowerment. Likewise, by saying we have X number of journalists who are women and are in the evening on prime time, and hence we are doing our bit on women empowerment, how many of them actually can break the shackles that are part of an overarching view that we have across the board, you know, cinema, art, take any instance. And I don't think we can get out of it till the time we move out of the social conditioning that I mentioned earlier. And that a lot of it comes from the power equations that we have. Hamsa mentioned in the beginning, you know, she mentioned about how a woman cannot be seen only as, you know, doing a job. Why is she seen as a woman politician that she mentioned? You know, that's a lot of it is because of the power equations that we had. She mentioned, you know, even in your household, a man holds, you know, he is the head of the family, even if the woman is contributing as much. She may be raising children, she may be doing housework, and if she's going out and working, she's bloody well doing a lot more than you, right? But still, she's not going to be given the same respect, even if she's by the family, by the husband, not by the family members. Because that is the power equation that we all are part of. And those power equations happen in work. That's the reason why, you know, despite having a large number of women in organizations, the boss is still a man, you know, let's say the CEO or the editor, or whichever way you want to look at it. How many women CEOs actually are there whose fathers have not started the company? So I'm sorry, I'm not going to include Ms. Godrej there, because, you know, it's a wrong example to give.
Ekta Kapoor.
Yeah, yeah, okay, yes. So, you know, so that's the point, you know, those power equations, if they don't change, how much of progress can we actually afford to make? And that happens across the field, even in academics that Dr. Vandana talked about, at home, in office, and even in society in general, you know. When you go out, you mentioned about, you know, interactions in public, again, it's the same power equation that holds true. Ye aurat hai, sundar hai, chalo dekh lete hain. Right? That's what it boils down to, right? Because it's a fundamentally, you know, unequal, asymmetrical power equation that you are in. How much of symmetry that you can actually bring in is what we can all strive towards. But beyond that, I mean, I wish I could answer how long-term the journey is. But yeah, it's not short-term for sure.
Can I make one point, taking a cue from Gauri? That Ekta Kapoor, if at all nudity is bad, I don't think nudity is bad, you know, kind of many of our art, you know, kind of best of our art presentations deals with this fact or phenomenon very, very beautifully, right? So we have Kama Sutra, we have Ajanta and Ellora. So if at all, you know, in the perspective, keeping the perspective where nudity is considered bad. Ekta OTT platforms Gauri talked about, in fact, the woman who has made most out of it, this nudity factor, is Ekta Kapoor. she is a woman, right? I think she is trying to change the rules of the games, right? It's not only men or the consumers of porn, rather she has tried to milk the nudity factor or porn factor, you know, establishing it as a kind of money making business, you know, empowering herself, you know.
Also, I think in many of Ekta Kapoor serials, it's the inverted gaze, right? It's the woman looking at a man's body a certain way. So
why is men's beauty industry is going so big? It's big. We must understand that. So we only look at certain ways because we have been trained. In fact, why men look at men's beauty industry? It's growing in leaps and bounds. Men also want to be beautiful. I want to be beautiful, irrespective of whether I'm a man or a woman or whosoever. I want to look presentable. What's big deal about it? Yes. Right. So I think
See, I am just taking a cue from what Gauriji has said that, and the question was raised by Shubhrastha also earlier, that whom are we asking for this and whom are we addressing that we want this equality, we want this liberty. So I want to place this argument that no, we are not asking it from anybody. We should not be asking it from anybody. And as has been said by all of us multiple times, that we need to make the choice. We need that environment that is there, that should be there to make a choice. And there should not be, just as you said, big noise over, you taking a decision to raise your children, to breastfeed your children, not to have your children, do a job, then leave the job and do your family work. All these things should be taken along with, what the rest of the society is doing. Like why, fine, biologically you are different and physically you look different, but when it comes to profession, when it comes to the different kinds of roles that you are playing in the society, where is my voice? Where is my voice? And that lead, I think women has to take. We cannot wait for others to give us that space and others to give us a reservation, others to place us in a particular position. We have to take the lead, and for that lead we will be given names, we'll hear different kinds of words from the society, but it has to go. I don't know how many years or how many maybe decades it will take to change the mindset, but yes, there is this social psychological mind block that still exists, and but the women has realized that exists. That's important. Now it is not that we have internalized what mindset exists and we have accepted that. No, we have not accepted that. So times have changed. We are not in 1960s and 1950s. We are in 21st century. So I see a positive road from here, because from where I am placed, or from how my journey was, how my family was there with me, and I got that space and I was able to do what I wanted to do, maybe because of that. But I see that this can happen, this can take place in Indian society also, though there are challenges because of the world being a patriarchal society.
Hamsa, do you want to add something?
Sure. So I think the whole narrative has to change from women empowerment. I don't think anybody is weak. I have had people, when you talk of reservations, it's only for people who are weak. It's not about weakness here. It's about incentivizing women to come out and do something. How do you incentivize them, and why should you incentivize them? Because women are not used to coming out and doing something apart from rearing families, historically. There are only few, not like we didn't have Jayalalitha, not like we didn't have Indira Gandhi, but they're charismatic leaders. They are just one in thousands and one in many lakhs who come out like that and show themselves out. But on a regular scale, on a reasonable, normalistic pedestal, when you measure it, there are very few women who have the capacity or the know-how that they can do something beyond this. So I think it has to be more of incentivizing women to participate more in public discourse or in mainstream professionalism or contributing to society, nation building. But it's about developing it in a holistic way. Reservations also, I am for reservations. I think it really is a great thing for to incentivize women into politics. But that's not the only thing. I think there has to be awareness at the first place. Otherwise, it would just be like what we had with the local body elections. Many local body elections reservations. Even now many women participate because it's 33% reservation. So women have to participate. So the political leaders host their brothers, their sisters or their mothers, and they don't even know what they're talking. They don't have awareness, they don't have the exposure, they don't have the know-how. Even if somebody tells them, they don't have the capacity to understand and execute things. So in that situation, just having reservations like we've been fighting for, we want the bill to be passed, it really doesn't make much of a sense unless you're dealing with it in a holistic manner. And I think the holistic manner begins with changing the narrative with the society. The society has to change its mindset about how it looks at people, how it looks at women. I think it begins there, and discussions like these where we're breaking the stereotype, we're breaking the regular things that we are used to. Provide reservation to women, they will get onto the mainstream, ho gaya, kaam khatam, kel khatam. But we are breaking the stereotype right now. Discussions like this are telling us that we have to do beyond what we've been doing so far. And women involvement, as long as we want to be a developed country, as long as we want to move ahead, as long as we want to be number one in the world now or anytime in the future, I think it is inevitable that we bring women on board as soon as possible. 50% of population is being ignored and not being cared for and not being put into the mainstream life. There is no way the country moves forward. So I think it's if we are at our peaks with respect to this, and I think we should have put something on ground to get this going.
Thank you so much. I think it was a really enriching session, at least for me, I'm sure for the viewers as well. Stay tuned to India Foundation digital handles. Stay tuned for conversations like these, IF specials, IF dialogues. Stay tuned, keep in touch, keep writing to us. Thank you.
Thank you.